If you are working from home or have a dream of running your own business or starting something online, even as a hobby, you are going to want to listen to this episode. I am so excited to be interviewing someone with an amazing Etsy shop who sells amazing planner stickers, and she has incredible advice about balancing it all. She even talks about her postpartum anxiety, how she juggles everything, how she fits everything in, and how you can too. So definitely keep listening. I can't wait for you guys to hear this. Glue. It's messy, it's sticky, it gets everywhere, but it's also really useful. Just like the glue that we need to put together the pieces of our life as busy working moms. We have after-school activities, we have homework, we have cleaning, we have laundry, and, we want to spend time with our kids as well in the process and maybe even have some time for ourselves. This podcast is for the busy moms out there who are balancing work, life, and everything in between, and we all know that in between encompasses a lot of things. If you're a mom who wants to do the best in all areas of life but still have time for yourself, this podcast is for you. I love to interview other moms and find out what works for them, get ideas from them, get inspired by them, and learn, we're all in this together. But I also like to share my own tips, tricks, struggles, triumphs, and share it all with you. So grab a load of laundry, lock yourself in the bathroom, go for a walk, do whatever you got to do, but I am just so glad you're here. Hey Glue Sticks, today is the day. I am so incredibly excited for you guys to hear this interview. As you know, if you have listened to the intro of this podcast, episode 1, go back and listen to it if you haven't already. I am going to be interviewing other working moms of all kinds. My goal is to get as many different career choices, business ideas, anything, you name it, other kinds of working moms on this podcast with little kids, older kids, moms who have retired with kids, moms who are caregivers for elderly parents, and that's their full-time job. Just so many different moms to weigh in and share their struggles, their triumphs, what works for them, and hopefully share their own message that they feel empowered to share, but don't really have a platform to share it. Today, I am kicking this off with an incredible interview with an amazing woman named Amy Miller from the company Simply Beautiful Plans. She runs an Etsy shop that is fabulous. A lot of you probably have heard of her already if you love planners and planner stickers. She lives in Canada. She has 2 little boys, and she is running her business in the little nooks and crannies of her day, and she has such a wonderful and empowering message to share with you guys. She will be touching on switching careers as a new mom and how that affected her and what made her decide to do that, how she looked to find fulfillment outside of motherhood and how that connected to postpartum anxiety and how she overcame that, how she is juggling a business with kids at home full time and how she has very little help doing so. She'll touch on minimalism and how that has helped her and share lots of practical tips along the way. I am so just honored to have her on the podcast as the first interview, and I cannot wait. Now, in honor of keeping things real, because that is what I am all about on Work Life Glue across the board and just in my life, I want to be very authentic. I am wearing my baby Gwen, who's just a few weeks old when I recorded this episode, in a carrier during this whole interview. I try to get her to sleep beforehand, and of course, she'll sleep great whenever I don't really care if she sleeps, but when it's time for me to do something, she's wide awake. You might hear a little bit of her cooing and breathing and snoring throughout this episode, but that's the life of a working mom. You got to make do with what you have during the time you have, and thankfully Amy was really sweet about it. I'm just sharing that so it empowers you guys that sometimes, you have little kids running around. It's okay. It's beautiful, that we can do things with our children around. So keep that in mind when you're listening. Hopefully she doesn't really make a whole lot of noise, but if you do hear anything, that's why. Now I'm just going to let the interview play and hopefully you guys find a lot of joy and empowerment and some practical tips throughout this whole interview. Okay. Hi, Amy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. I'm just so excited to have you on here as my first guest. So thank you for being my guinea pig, but I think it should go really well. I think everybody will love to hear your message and how you are a working mom in a unique way. I feel like everybody's a unique mom or a working mom in a unique way in today's world with the pandemic. But before we jump in, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your family?
I have been married now for 6 years. My husband, Miles, he works in oil and gas. And
Okay.
I have two boys. Elliot is my oldest, he's 5. And Winston is my youngest, he's 3.
Okay. So very similar to mine, 5'3", and
Yeah,
then the
I think our
newborn. So,
two our two are really similar. Winston is 3 in September. So I think that's partially how I found you, because you were pregnant at the same time as me and we were both doing daycare.
oh, you were doing, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, why don't we jump into that? Why don't you share a little bit about your journey as a working mom? Like, were you always a working mom? How did you become a working mom? Just the history up until now, I guess.
Okay, well, I started out actually as a teacher, and I really struggled with that work-life balance. I'm sure you
Sure.
can relate to that. It
Yeah.
was really hard. So I ended up switching to adult education, and it was really fun. And that's why I started to get into more digital design, because I was creating my own e-learning content. And I started to really like that. But then after having Elliot, I discovered that I did not want to leave him. I had huge anxiety with leaving him full time and going back to my career. So I decided, what can I do instead? And one of the things was childcare. This was something that I could do in my home. I have my education background, so that does help with government top up here.
For sure. Yeah.
And then the other piece that was missing for me was just that creative side that I found I wasn't getting fulfilled just being a mom. And I thought I would. I always wanted to just be a stay-at-home mom, but something for me was missing, and I needed that extra bit. And for me, that was designing and art and creativity. And I also found it really helped me with postpartum anxiety, was just to sit down and be creative. So that was kind of how I started my other business, which is Simply Beautiful Plants. And I slowly made it my goal to just only have one company. So I grew Simply Beautiful Plants to the point that I was able to close my day home.
That's awesome. How long ago was that?
I closed it back in April of last year. So it's been,
like 2019?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. And how long ago did you start Simply Beautiful Plants?
Simply Beautiful Plants, I started in December of 2015. So I'm coming up on my 5-year anniversary.
Okay. So you did daycare and that for about 3.5 years. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
So I totally get the juggle.
Mm-hmm.
So just tell us a little bit about Simply Beautiful Plants for people who don't know what it is. Go check it out, everybody. Her stuff is beautiful.
So it's sort of this decorative planning. This is, I feel like it's the scrapbooking of our generation. So when I grew up, my mom did Creative Memories, which was all these fancy photo books. And I feel like our generation is more into planning in sort of a prettier way, I guess you could say. Right. And it's a way of memory keeping every single day. So I create functional stickers as well as decorative stickers for a bunch of different planner types. So it helps you sort of stay on task. You can use them like script stickers just to mark down things that you do all the time. And it just makes your life hopefully a little bit easier and more organized.
Right. And beautiful.
And beautiful.
And it's fun. And I'm sure with kids too, like they can be doing their stickers and you can be overdoing your stickers. Like it's a way to bond with them, but like you don't want them to play with your stickers because they're way prettier. But can you talk a little bit about like how you learn to design? Like, do you hand draw the stickers? How does that work? 'Cause I've just been looking at them all and I'm like, how does she even do this? For maybe anybody interested in dabbling in design or something on the side.
So it's sort of a mixture of both. I do hand draw some of my own script stickers and doodles. I also hand draw some of the foil. So for some of the designs that actually are the pretty metallic, I will hand draw that on top of the art and design. And then some art I pay. So I pay artists to be able to sell it and distribute it commercially. So I pay extra from an artist in order to do that. And then I also work with some artists too. So it's a variety. So cool. Yeah.
Right. And then you have, stickers for different types of planners. And how do you keep track of all that on the back end? Because I know the design's one part, but then there's the whole business side of it. And do you ship yourself too?
Yes, I do it everything. I
Oh,
wear
man.
all the hats.
Right. Oh, wow.
Yes.
So how many hours would you say you work a day, or what is a typical day, if there is a typical for you?
I'm pretty like regimented with my schedule. So
Okay.
I get up every morning at 4 and I work from 4 until typically 5:30. And that's my first work period. And then I go to the gym. I've started to prioritize my workouts. And after that, I'm with the kids. It's focus time with my kids. I'm teaching my oldest, it's kindergarten at home. And then my youngest, I've been doing preschool. So that's what I do in the morning with them. And then I have nap and quiet time. So that's when I get my next 2-hour stretch where I get to work. And that's pretty much my day of when I can actually work. I get the odd day. I get one day a week where my mom comes. Like today, she comes for 2 hours. So I get another 2-hour work in. And that's pretty much it for a work day. Occasionally in the evenings, if I have too much going on, my husband after supper, he'll spend time with them one-on-one and I'll get another time if I'm feeling up to it. But some days
Right.
after dinner, I'm done. So I'll lie down.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah, your day is so similar to mine. And I'm sure a lot of moms with young kids who are working from home, you can't do a whole lot when they're awake because I don't know about you, but like my 3-year-old's in destruction mode or like just hurt herself mode or, just like I have to keep my eye on her every second. So I'm like, I might do an Instagram post or something really quick, but like the second my eyes are off of her.
Yes, our 3-year-olds are so similar.
Yes. Oh, God.
I thought boys were harder, but I feel like
I have not had that experience. No. So I have a friend with 4 boys, and she's like, "Wow, I think I'm happy with my 4 boys."
Yeah, I feel like
I love my girls. Wouldn't trade them for anything, but they're just as energetic.
Yep.
Okay, so I just love hearing that you do it in such short amount of time. And so when you were doing daycare, was it basically kind of the same thing, just nap time and before the kids came and stuff like that?
Same schedule. I found when I was doing daycare and my shop wasn't as busy, I didn't have to wake up at 4 a.m. But then once my shop started getting busy, I started doing the 4 a.m. before the kids would come. And then I would end at 6 so I could then prep before the kids arrived. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So your kids are with you full time then, besides when your mom comes. So you really have to fit it in those cracks of time, right? So that's, I think especially moms right now with the pandemic, like they have to figure out how to do all that. And just seeing like, how many sales have you had? I think I saw like 27,000 on Etsy or something.
Yeah, just over. I just hit over 27,000.
That's amazing. A couple
weeks ago, yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. I'm like, I don't know how she does it all. That's honestly just amazing. I think it's so cool. And so as far as like, so you have each day, do you have any difference between the days, like a weekly schedule or anything that's really different? Or maybe you do something on the weekends for work, or is it pretty much just the same Monday through Friday?
The hours are the same every single day. I don't take weekends off. I tried taking weekends off, not waking up at 4 a.m. and I didn't like it. I love my mornings, which I have to thank you for because watching your morning routine encouraged me to wake up earlier.
Okay. Yeah. I love it too. I mean, everybody thinks I'm crazy, but
me too.
It gives you fuel for the day to give time to yourself, even if time to yourself is your business. If you love your business, like it's exciting.
Yes. And everyone calls me crazy, but once they try it, they immediately call me and say, wow, this was life-changing. I see why you do this now.
Exactly. Because by the end of the day, like you said, I'm like worthless. I can't even get through an episode of The Office without falling asleep. I'm like, I could never get work done unless I'm super like motivated, but I'll spend all day thinking, oh, I'm going to do this at the end of the day and this. And I know there's probably some moms listening who can do stuff at night. And I think that's amazing. Like I never preach you have to get up early if that doesn't work for you. If you can do stuff at night, I think that's great. But this just shows like, do what you have to do to make it work and live your dream. And I think you're doing that. And I think it's amazing. And we'll all get to a place where we don't have tiny little kids anymore. And maybe they'll go to school. Do you plan to homeschool long term, or is that more of like a pandemic thing, or you just don't know?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I've always been open to it. I was actually homeschooled for a few years. My mom pulled
Okay.
my brother and I, and she was a teacher as well. So I had a great experience being homeschooled.
That's awesome.
And so I've kind of experienced both. So I'm open to homeschooling, but part of me was also looking forward to them having that independence and going to school, and me getting a full workday. I don't know what that is. So I don't know.
No, I hear you. I hear you. My oldest is in kindergarten, and with the newborn, I love her, but it's been really nice. And she comes home and has like all this fun stuff she did. And I still get a lot of time with her because she gets home around 2:15, 2:30. So we still get a lot of time together, but it's just been so nice to kind of outsource that part. I don't know how long that will last with everything going on, but I just feel really grateful with my life having a newborn now to at least one child is, kind of occupied during the day, but, we'll make do with whatever we have to do.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite part about being a working mom?
I think one of the biggest things that I love about it is having the flexibility. There's times where I can change my workload. I can change how much I need to make in a month, depending on what's happening in our life. So I like that flexibility. Whereas when I was at a 9 to 5, I didn't have that. I couldn't make a few extra dollars one month before Christmas. It was always the same income. So I do like that I have that flexibility. I also like that if something happens in my kids' lives, if they're sick, I can rearrange my workload and be there for them. And as far as vacations in the past, it was nice. I could book a vacation whenever. I could plan, I could close my shop, or I could keep it open and still be able to have a break whenever I needed to. So I like
and not
that.
have to ask somebody. That's awesome. Yeah.
So only having to worry about my husband's time is nice.
Right.
It makes it easier.
Have you ever been solely a stay-at-home mom, no daycare, no business?
Just for a little
besides
bit.
Maternity leave?
Just maternity leave. I mean, in Canada, we have a year. So
right. That's right. Yes, I know. Why United States? So compared to like that time, and obviously when you have a new baby, it's crazy. So it's hard to compare to that. But compared to, being a stay-at-home mom, and that is your sole role, not bashing stay-at-home moms at all. I think they're amazing. And we're kind of like a pseudo stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
What do you like about being a working mom compared to having nothing else on your plate, just being a mom, solely a mom?
I like having something that's for me. I think that was what I struggled with being a mom without the other stuff going on, is that you sort of start to lose some of your interests unless you're really dedicated to allowing that time. And I think for me, having it be that this is my work, I have to allow time for it. And before, I wouldn't make time for myself. And this is sort of making time for me. And it's not selfish. It's my work.
No.
So I think that's a big difference for me.
Yeah, I agree. I feel the same way. It's kind of funny because you go from little people depending on you to like big people depending on you for your stickers and everything. But I think having something that fuels you outside of your kids, not everybody needs that. And plenty of people can find that with a hobby or something like that. But I think there are those of us who just really want something that we've created that, or some kind of work that somebody else has created and they're participating in and giving back to the world in a different way. I think a lot of women can relate to that need for something else, especially because our kids hopefully won't be in our house forever. So I think a lot of people can relate to that void we sometimes feel of like, okay, I love my child so much, but is this it? Like poopy diapers and tantrums and cuddles. Like I love that part of it, but it still can be a little empty. I think a lot of women can find that, especially the first couple of years of having kids. It's draining, and it's nice to have something else to put your energy into.
Yes.
Calling all mamas. If you are listening to this episode, which you obviously are if you're hearing me, I would like to invite you to consider to enter to be part of this podcast. I am looking for moms of all different career types, all different areas around the world, all different age children, any type of working mom to be interviewed on this podcast. So if you have a message in your heart that you feel like you need to share, but you don't really have a place to share it, or maybe you do have a place to share it, but you just want to spread it to other working moms, make sure you head over to worklifeglued.com/podcast/apply so you can apply to be on the show. And basically, I will just interview you like I did with Amy. I might have some specific questions, based on what you enter in the form, but you basically just fill out the form. I will read it. I will have a whole inbox folder in my Gmail to go through those when it's time to pick different episodes, and we will just chat, and it will be part of my podcast. I really want to represent women from all over the world, so I definitely would encourage you to take a second to just consider applying, and I would love to see your submission in my inbox. Back to the interview. What would you say are your biggest struggles of being a working mom? Maybe even talk about, daycare, being like a childcare provider compared to now running your own business.
I think some of the struggles is wearing all the hats and being able to take your hat off, like taking off my business hat when I'm with my kids and being present. I think that's a huge struggle. I feel like, especially for our generation, there's so many things out there that are going to pull our attention, and trying to just stay focused on our kids when we're with them. And then when I'm working, trying to ignore all the distractions so that I can be as productive as possible in that short amount of time. So there's always going to be my phone buzzing. There's always going to be these things that are going to want to take my attention away, and really just staying focused on what I need to. So for me, I've been really trying to just put my phone away when I'm doing, my schooling time with my kids, when I'm wanting to have that one-on-one time. But then also teaching my kids that when I'm going and folding the laundry, that they can be independent too.
Right.
So that
for
balance.
Sure. Right.
And I feel like with running a daycare, my kids got so used to me being so present, because you have to be in the room at all times. So my oldest is a Klingon. Like, he just wants to always be near me. He always wants to be interacting with me, because that's what he grew up with. I was their ringleader. And whereas my youngest doesn't have as much, he didn't experience daycare for as long. So he is so independent, so completely different kids.
Yeah, I find the same thing. And I know a lot of my audience transitioning out of daycare, a lot of them are daycare providers probably listening. So I think a lot of them can relate to that. I found the same thing. My older daughter, Celia, who was part of my daycare since she was 10 months old when I started, and I had nannied before that. So she was just used to me orchestrating. And with a daycare, you can't just be like, okay, you guys play, I'm going to be upstairs. You're with them, literally focused on them all the time. And I don't think that's realistic as a mom to be focused on your child all the time when they're obviously like a baby. Yes, but you can wear them and still do stuff like I am right now. But when they're older, you hope, and it's good for them to go play and do their own thing a little bit, within reason, depending on their age. So yeah, that's been a struggle here too. I totally hear you. I think the pandemic kind of helped, because I closed the daycare, and I got to a point where I'm like, and I talked to my 5-year-old, and she's old enough to kind of get it now. And we had dedicated quiet time, which kind of introduced her to, having that time on her own. So you mentioned quiet time a little bit. Do you kind of do the same thing with your older son, where he has to do his own thing for a while, or how did you start that, and how has it been working for you?
So I did it sort of the same way I'd set it up with my day home, because I'd had kids that were older that needed to have independent quiet time as well. So I kind of introduced it that way too. He still occasionally will nap. He's in hockey now. So on those days he naps because he's exhausted. But he pretty much, we talk about it. And if he's looking really tired, we'll be like, you know what? I think you really need a rest. So you need to try. And he'll go upstairs and he will have a good 2-hour nap, which is so nice.
Awesome.
But
yes.
On other days, I let him pick an activity that he wants to do. He'll sometimes sit on the couch and read a book. He'll sometimes do some coloring. He'll work with kinetic sand. So I have a few options just on the main floor that are quiet. And the biggest thing for him, I find he needs to just be on his own and not interacting with me.
Right.
He
Oh, I hear
needs
you.
that mental not communicating in order for him to recharge. So I always frame it in that your body needs to recharge. So you need to be doing something to allow that. So, and he knows, and we're working on his independence. So he always talks like, I'm working on being independent, mom. So
Cute. Yeah, with my 5-year-old, we talk about how she's an introvert. Like, I think it's good to use those words with kids. They
mhm.
learn so many words. They can learn all kinds of words at a young age. And I think it's so good for them to learn and to kind of have that power, like, oh, I can go do this and it's good for me. And to teach them, that energy is not unlimited. I wish it was, because moms
Yeah.
everywhere would be so happy. But for them, I think that's great. I think it's a good lesson. And I just want to share for moms listening, like, it's not just okay, it's good to take time for yourself, in the
Mhm.
day if you can. It's not selfish. It's teaching your child like that you're your own person and you have your own needs. Obviously within reason, with the time that makes sense for them. But I think it's so good for them to learn that from a young age, because you don't want a 12-year-old still following you around the house and don't know what to do. Like, we want our kids to learn to be self-sufficient and to do things on their own. So I think that's awesome. Backtracking a little bit, you had mentioned, and we kind of chatted before this about you sharing a little bit about your postpartum anxiety. Because in the previous episode, I talked about my postpartum depression and how that kind of fueled Work Life Glue and my own passion project that's become this business. And I would love if you could maybe share a little bit about how that's kind of similar for you and how that played out in your life.
Yeah, so for me, I've always sort of struggled with anxiety. It's always been a lingering thing. I think it's partially my personality in that I am a
Mm-hmm.
perfectionist and I like things a certain way. And I tend to, like, if things aren't a certain way, my anxiety will creep up. And
Right.
so I found throughout my pregnancy, I was struggling with some anxiety. And I had worked with a counselor at my maternity clinic, and we were really working on, like, what's in my toolbox of what I can do in order to help with this. And so some of the things that I know help me are art and being creative. So that's something that I've always leaned on. And after having Elliot, I really struggled with anxiety. I was feeling like I just couldn't have him go to anyone else. Like, there was a few people I trusted him with, but other than that, I had huge anxiety, and I was like, this isn't normal. Like, there's that
Right.
mother instinct of, this is my baby, but this was just felt
Mm-hmm.
like even more. And so I just always felt this huge anxiety, and always these thoughts would come through my mind of worst case scenario would happen. And it was just awful. And I needed to get out of that headspace. And so I finally was like, go back to your toolbox. What do you know you need to do? And that was how I started Simply Beautiful Plans. I started designing. I wanted to physically start painting, but with a newborn, getting out all these
Right.
supplies is no
Right.
basic. So I was like, what can I do that I can start and end quickly? So I started doing digital design, and I
That's
started
so cool.
making my own stickers. I started making printables. And then I thought I should sell these just to recoup the cost of the art that I'm buying.
Right.
And
That's
that
awesome.
was how it started. I just started selling these printable stickers, and it was helping me so much with my anxiety, and that I just kept on going.
Wow. That's amazing. And then, so once you're doing that, did you find that filled you up enough, or did you still have to do counseling? If you don't mind sharing a little bit about that.
I still kept in contact with my doctor, but the stuff that I was doing was really helping. And so they didn't deem that I needed any medication, which was great.
Okay.
I also worked with a naturopath too. I started
Okay.
taking magnesium, which I found also really helps me with
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. So I take that as well. But there's
Okay.
times where I find my anxiety can be more triggered. So I do try to sort of, what are some things I can do in my life so that I don't feel triggered?
Right.
So
Could you share any of those
one
things?
thing that I've been working towards, we bought a camper this summer, and
Okay.
I discovered going to our camper how much I loved minimalism, because our
Okay.
camper only had a set wardrobe for all of us. It was very simple. I only had so many toys for the kids. Everything was just simplified there. And every time I would go there, I just felt like I could breathe. Like it was just such a nice break. And I told my husband, every time I come home, I feel like the walls are coming in on me. We have way too much stuff. And just the mental load of having this all, I don't know. It was just too much for me. So I told him, I think I really want to move towards a more simplified, like, do we need 3 mixers in our house, or, do we need all this stuff? And a lot of it was from the day home. I have so much from running a day home that I no longer need. So I need to start paring down and simplifying. And as I've pared down, I've seen how much better the boys play, and it makes everything for me less anxiety. The playroom doesn't fill me with that stress that it used to, because there's not as much available for them to just scatter, especially the 3-year-old. So yes. I've just found things like that are really helping. So that's one project I've been working on sometimes in the evenings when I have energy, is I've been going through all of, our baby stuff that I'm finally selling and getting rid of. That's been it's just been making me feel so good.
Good. I thought you were going to say the opposite. Like, no. I'm just so sad from that. Yeah, I hear you. I'm excited. Like, I love the baby ears, but I'm so excited because it's just so big. There's so much of it, and I'm totally the same way, especially closing my daycare. We do have so much in common. Like, I just look around and I'm like, why? The stuff's like breeding when I'm not looking. I don't know where it's all coming from. And it's visually, I think it's just so hard to look at. And if we feel that, I can only imagine our kids or our spouse, everybody. It's just too much. So I hear you. And I'm really glad that those extra things that aren't medicine, not knocking medicine. I use medication for my depression, but, finding ways to fill yourself up that, not just looking to medication. What can you change in your life? I am a huge proponent for that. Preventatively. And, when you start to notice those signs, like, what can you do before it gets worse? I think that's amazing. And I think it's so incredible to hear that, like me, something beautiful came out of something really hard. I think so much of life is that way. And I think motherhood too, motherhood can be really hard a lot of the time, but hopefully, over the years, these beautiful children will grow up to be like beautiful human beings that are well-rounded and give back to the world in some way. So I just see that mirrored in my life so much, and it's so cool to see it in somebody else's too. I'm interrupting this interview just to let you guys know that Amy has graciously offered to give you guys 15% off your order at her Etsy shop, Simply Beautiful Plans, if you enter the code GLUESTICK in all caps, so GLUESTICK in all caps, on her Etsy shop. When you go to order, you will get 15% off your entire order. I think it's so awesome. Her stickers are absolutely gorgeous. You guys will love them. So make sure you head over to her shop after you finish listening to this interview. And if you order, use the code GLUESTICK for 15% off. Back to the interview. Backtracking, or just kind of going off of that, how did you learn about the actual, printing the stickers and running an Etsy shop? Like, where did you turn to for the business side of that and the creation side of that? Where did you learn all of it?
I want to say I was really strategic, but I was not. I was just, okay. I figured it out as I went along. Google was my best friend. I started with a printable shop because I didn't have the cutting machines. I didn't have anything. I did it all digitally. I didn't even have a really good printer. I had what I had, and I took what I made from selling just the digital to then reinvest and buy, my first cutting machine. I didn't want to take, because at the time I was on mat leave. So I didn't want my husband investing into a business and feeling that pressure that I had to make this successful.
Right.
So I just kept on saving my income and putting it back into the company. And that was how I slowly kind of learned. I got my first cutting machine and I started using their design software. I started learning as I went. I like to play around with digital stuff and figure it out. And then I also like to watch, YouTube videos. There's so many on how to make stickers, how to do certain things in design software. And I also just used what I had already known from designing e-learning and all that, and put it together. And I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I'm learning all the time.
That's awesome. I think it's so easy, especially in today's world, to look at somebody where they're at right now and see like, because I look at your shop and I'm like, holy Toledo, like how does she learn how to do that? It's so beautiful. Like I could never do that. But then hearing you say like you didn't even start with shipping anything, you just had printables that people could, print on their own because you didn't have the stuff for that, and you slowly built it up over time. And you even shared like you didn't even know this was going to be a business when you first started creating. It was just for you. So I think that's just a really great message of, start where you are, little by little, you'll get there. Even if you don't know where you're going, just start. If you have something in your heart that you feel like you need to do, just start. Even if you feel overwhelmed or you don't know what to do, there's so many resources these days. I really don't think that's a good excuse anymore for not starting, because you can learn anything. And there's people like us out there, who would be happy to chat once in a while, DM us on Instagram. I think a lot of people see influencers or people online with somewhat decent sized followings and see them as out of reach, but really we're just like normal moms just making some money for our family and doing something we love. And I feel so encouraged hearing you talk about that myself. And I hope other moms, especially those maybe on the fence about starting a business, or even, just starting a side project or selling things at their local like school board meetings or whatever, like it can start small and maybe it will stay small forever and you'll love that, or maybe it will become something. You just really never know. But I think we all have that motherly instinct, but we also have this like dream instinct, like follow what your gut is telling you. It's usually pretty incredible where it will lead you. But I think so many of us suffocate that because we're moms and we have all these things to do. But just hearing you talk about how you fit it in, and it's, it seems pretty manageable. I'm sure on your end, sometimes it can feel like, oh my goodness, like overwhelming, but you look happy. It seems, do you feel like it's been worth it? Do you like where you're at? Like, do you have plans for the future? Are you happy kind of where you're at, or what are your thoughts on that?
I love where I'm at. I always have goals. I always have things, levels that I want to get to. I want to switch to where I'm able to take weekends off. Not necessarily not waking up at 4, but my goal is to be able to wake up at 4 and maybe do something for myself, like read.
Okay, sure.
That would be a huge thing, because those are some things that I find get put aside, or I wait till nighttime, and that doesn't happen. So I do have those goals, but that's something I'm working towards. So it's always growing, always venturing into new things, new products.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the sky's the limit. And as times change, I'm sure, your business will change too. And for creative people, I think that's kind of the fun part of it. It's not always the same all the time. And I just find business myself really creative. And even though I'm in a totally different way of doing business than you, but I just love that you can always be changing and learning new things and finding what works for you. And it's just so fun. And I just encourage any mom who wants to try it, like just try it. There's so many ways to do business, especially online. And it's pretty low cost to start depending on what you're doing. And it's really cool because you get to meet new people too, which I think is really fun. What advice would you give to moms who want to do something like you're doing, maybe run an Etsy shop or sell something on their own online shop? What advice would you give them?
I think my biggest advice would find something that you're passionate about, because if you're not passionate about it, you're going to really have a hard time making time for it.
Right.
When you're busy with kids, you only have so much time in a day that you can allocate to your work. So I hope it's something that you love and you truly want to bring and help other people with, because I think that's what's going to drive you to get out of bed in the morning and keep on creating and pushing. So that's my biggest advice to people. And my second one would be try and find something that you think is maybe unique that you're bringing to the market that's not out there, that you think is missing, because most likely other people are wanting it too. And that will help you.
And what would you say for Simply Beautiful Plans is your uniqueness?
It keeps on changing. When I first started, there were not any shops in Canada that were selling Happy Planner printables. It was
Okay.
all sized for the Erin Condren at the time. So I saw that, oh, this is a niche opportunity. There's not
Right.
many out there. I'm going to start making these. And now there's so
Okay.
easy to find it.
Yeah.
So my niche is always changing. Then it was foil. I got into foiled
Yep.
stickers, and there weren't that many at the time in Canada that were selling them in kits. So it's always kind of evolving of what I'm sort of trying to break through or trying to do something
Right.
new in the
That's
market.
really cool. Yeah, but it's cool. You kind of get to see and reinvent yourself a little bit, and offer, find new people who are interested in your stuff because it's not always the same. I think that's really cool. Um, so you mentioned getting up at 4 a.m. and using nap time and being really tired at night. How do you
Mhm.
fit in things like, friends or your spouse, or you talked about exercise, so that's been a priority, but how do you fit in those extra things that are still really important and necessary, but, really hard as a mom, much less a working mom?
So for me, I try to fit my work around my most productive times. So I know for
Okay.
me, I've always been a morning person. So the morning is the best time for me to get my hardest work done. So whether that's doing design, those things that are going to take the most brain power, I allocate for the morning. Nap time, I'm normally a little bit tired. I've had the kids all morning, so I save that time for things like cutting stickers that don't take as much of my mental load. And then I can multitask. I can listen to a podcast while I'm cutting stickers and get as much done as possible. And then I save sort of the evenings and afternoons as friend time or time with my husband. So, like last night, I had a friend come over and I was helping her with her business. That's a great time to do it for me. And they don't get the best version of me because I'm more tired, but I kind of have to
They
make
understand.
sacrifices with my time. And then
Yeah.
my husband and I, we always say Fridays are our date night. We don't necessarily go anywhere, but it's a time where we both unplug and we dedicate that time for one another. And it's something we both look forward to every week.
I love that. I love that's like very strategic though. Like best time early in the morning for you. Everybody can analyze what works for them, but and then the little bit more monotonous or stuff you can do without thinking, you do during nap, and you get to kind of fill yourself up because you're listening to a podcast or watching a YouTube video or whatever, or watching TV. And then, yeah, nighttime is not always the best version, but I think you do what you got to do. And especially if friends are also moms, like they get it. And I find when I spend time with my friends, even though I'm an introvert, especially during the pandemic and being around little ones all the time, like I find I get energy from that again. Like
Mhm.
talking to friends and adults and people like who I don't have to wipe their butts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just so refreshing and it gives me energy and I just feel so inspired afterwards. And I think that's such a cool way to kind of break down. Like I'm learning something. I'm like I edit in the morning, which doesn't require a lot of brain power. Maybe I should change my day around. Like I
Yeah.
really appreciate you sharing how you kind of thought that through. It makes a lot of sense. And hopefully it will for other moms listening. As we wrap up, what are some things that you have to say no to or choose to say no to in order to, put your family first and your business first?
I think when I first started as an entrepreneur, that was the hardest thing, was to say no to potential opportunities, to say no to friends. But I had a whole mind shift. I think it was maybe, I want to say it was Rachel Hollis that had said, when you're saying yes to something else, you have to say no to something. So if I'm saying yes to this business opportunity, what in my life am I now having to say no to? Our time is not unlimited. So you have to be really precious with your time. And so that's what I try and do when I have a hard decision. If I have to say no to it, I think, what do I need to move so I can say yes to this? And am I okay with that? And it
Okay.
makes saying no easier.
Right.
And
Are there any things that you can think of off the top of your head that you've had to say no to? Like, I just know, especially when I was doing daycare, like I said no to whole house cleaning. I had a cleaner at that time. Are there any things like that or
yes,
outsourcing? I know you said you do everything for the business. So it sounds like that you do, but is there anything in your life that you kind of outsource or get help with?
yes, cleaning.
Okay.
I used to do it all when I had my day home. And then as soon as I was juggling both, I I just felt like I was always failing in that department. I'd have to give up a whole day of my working in order to clean the entire house. So that I've just said no to, and I'm okay with having someone come in every other week and give my house a thorough clean. And yeah, I don't feel guilty about it at all. I love
Good.
it.
You shouldn't. You shouldn't. Yeah,
And
I think that's awesome because I think we do feel like we have to do everything. And is your dust that important to you? You know, taking care of your dust as important as taking care of your children or taking care of your business and helping others. I think when we really think about it like that, it's kind of funny that people are even afraid to share that they have a cleaner. I've had negative comments about that before, and I'm like, really? You know, are we really going to slam moms for outsourcing certain things? Were
no.
there any other things you wanted to share, or is that
I
like the main
also, I
thing?
mean, I have my accountants, and then
Okay.
they've also had to pick up the slack for me for bookkeeping
Okay.
because, I've gotten so busy. I thought I would have more time with the pandemic, and it hasn't. I've been just swamped. So I had to reach out to them and say, I don't have the time right now,
Right.
and
No,
I
I
need
think
you. I
that's
need,
great.
and it's, taking ownership of what you have control and time for, and stuff you just have to let go. And now I'm looking back, what can I do differently? Because I want to take ownership of that again. I want to be in charge of my bookkeeping. And I thought, what's sort of stopping me from sitting down? And I was like, you know what? It's education. I need to spend more time learning about coding everything. I need to
Okay.
learn. So I'm like, I've booked my mom now. She's coming an extra day for a little bit so that I can spend time on Skillshare, learning more,
Okay.
and then
That's
going
cool.
in and catching myself up and taking ownership of it again. So
I
that's one of
love
my
that.
goals, but it was figuring out what was sort of blocking me.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Like, if I want to fit this in, what do I have to do to make it fit? Because, like, I talk about, life being a puzzle. You can't just jam stuff together. You have to figure out how it will fit. And I love that you're kind of figuring out, okay, I need my mom to come so that I can learn more, and that will help me be able to take that back on. I think that's really cool and great advice. So now we're going to be heading into a little segment that I'm calling Mama Survival Tips, where every episode, if I have somebody on that's a guest sharing, I'll have them share a tip from their life that makes their life easier as a working mom. And I will share my own, in other episodes. But what's a survival tip you have that kind of makes your life easier and might help other moms make their life a little bit easier?
So one thing that I've started doing for about a year now, and I found it's made a huge difference, is at the end of the day, at the end of the work day, I sort of think about everything that I achieved that day, what's still on my goal list, what I need to start with in the morning, and I write it out. So I
Okay.
physically write it in my work planner, what I need to achieve in that 4 a.m. block and what I'm hoping to achieve in my nap time block. And then I find when I go to bed, when my alarm goes off at 4 a.m., that list is going through my head. And it reminds me of why I need to get out of bed. Like, oh, I've got all these objectives that I have to accomplish right at 4 a.m. It
Yeah.
motivates me and it keeps me focused. As soon as I go into my office, I know what's waiting for me. It's prepped, it's ready to go. And I found that was a huge game changer for my productivity.
That's awesome. And I love how you word that too. You didn't say what things do I have to do? You said, what things do I have to achieve? And what are my objectives? Like, that's different than just, this is my to-do list. No, what do I actually want to achieve by the end? That's a really cool way to look at it too. And writing it down, I think, is great. So having that daily practice of doing that is not, I mean, I kind of do it at the beginning of the week, but so much can change from day to day. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
really good to be really intentional for the next day, because otherwise it can just easily get lost with little kids. So we also will have a segment where I talk about, or the guest talks about, some kind of product or service or app or something that also has made their life easier and has earned the mama seal of approval. So what in your life has earned the mama seal of approval for you?
One thing that I've been loving and my husband and I use a lot, it may seem silly, but it's called Out of Milk. And it's an app where you can keep track of your lists. So things that you've ran out of. And it also has other functions where you can have a to-do list in there. So I have a honey-do list in there where I keep track of things around the house that I see and I can't do. and he's aware of it, and I'm not having to constantly bug him and say, hey, honey, are you going to move those boxes for me? Are you going to do this? It's on that list, and he can then take charge of it and fit it in when it works for him. So less sort of bickering on when these things need to get done. There's ownership for him. And then the grocery list is great because he tends to do our big Costco run for us. So it's always in there, and we're not having to sit down before he goes and figure out everything we need. It's always been sort of compiling, and he can quickly run and grab it. So that's one thing that has saved us time, and it's really helped with our marriage and communication.
That's awesome. So Out of Milk is an app. I will link that in the show notes for anybody interested. Any tips on that of getting your husband on board to actually looking at it, or is he just naturally good at that?
It took some work at the beginning, but he saw how useful it was. He started to say he loves it. He's like, well, put it in the app, because I'll sometimes just be nice. I'm like, oh, we need more of this. We'll put it in. Like,
cute. Okay. That's funny. Yeah. So, and maybe, like if he has some spare time, because we all have so much spare time, he just like opens it and maybe does a few of those things, or he plans it into his week, or how does he do that usually?
Yeah. So he'll look at the app. We had one going for a bit for a camper of stuff that had to get done there. And so we were both sort of collaborating and working on it. I'm going to start a new one for Christmas so that we're both on the same page of what we're picking up and buying.
Yeah.
So that he can tell his family if they're asking about gifts, what's on our list. So stuff like that. It just helps so that we know what's
I'm looking it up when we end this call. No, that's great. That's something we struggle with a lot. Like, especially my husband has such a crazy schedule. So I'm like, it's so hard to plan anything, but if he just had a list that he could easily get to, I think that would help a lot. So thank you for sharing that. Well, do you have any final words that you might want to share with other working moms out there? Any encouragement or advice or anything like that?
I think just keep on pursuing your passions. And, if you're feeling stuck, like, know that you're not alone. There's so many communities out there and people that you can talk to and reach out to that have been in your shoes and can sort of encourage you along the way. Like, we know how hard it is to be a working mom and to balance everything and feel like you're not balancing anything. And,
right.
We can all sort of help each other out. And that's why I think all these groups that we have, your Facebook group is amazing for that.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you. I learned so much and I've been so encouraged. I hope everybody listening will feel the same way, and hopefully we'll learn from lots of other moms, but it's been such a pleasure to have you here kind of kicking things off. And I just really appreciate you being kind of like a guinea pig, but I had so much fun chatting with you. So thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. It was so fun. It was so nice to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. Ladies, my heart is literally on fire after that interview. I teared up, got a little emotional afterwards, just because this is such a complete dream come true for me. It is what I truly feel called to do, to help other women share their message. And I am so incredibly grateful to Amy for giving of her time and her talents for this episode. And if you didn't know, we are also doing a giveaway for this episode. And so if you head over to my Instagram, you'll find some information about it. But she is giving away a credit to her shop, which I think is so incredibly generous. So make sure you head over to my Instagram at SarahWLG and find out more about it there. But I'm so excited for everything that is coming for this podcast, more amazing women that I'm interviewing. And like I mentioned earlier in this episode, if you're interested in being interviewed, I have no idea how many entries are going to come in, and I can't promise that everybody will be on the show. But I do promise that I will do my best to get as many different women on here as possible, different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different areas around the world, different career choices, different businesses, and just really have a podcast that reflects women, working moms across, the entire world. I think that we have such strong messages to share, and we are underrepresented because we're so busy. And so I want to give women a platform to share everything they have to offer, their message, their wisdom that they have learned, and help each other, because we are a tribe. It takes a village, and I hope this podcast will be part of your village. So thank you so much for listening. Go get some things done, go love on your kids, and go live your dreams. I'll see you next time.